You've seen her images on giant billboards across the metro. Joumana Kayrouz. You've seen her images on buses across the city. Now get to know Joumana Kayrouz.
The war broke out in my home country, Lebanon. I was 11 years old, and I saw a lot of bloodshed and inequality and poverty. You can't grow up in an environment like that and not be affected by it and not want to make a difference. I graduated from Yale University with a master's in ethics. I speak 4 languages. It has always been innate in me fighting for the underdog and trying to do whatever it is I can to make a difference in the world.
Let Joumana Kayrouz protect your rights. Call the law offices of Joumana Kayrouz at 1-866-YOUR-RIGHTS, extension 100, or visit yourrights.com.
مساء الخير مستمعينا في كل مكان، نرحب بكم في حلقة جديدة من برنامج يور رايتس مع المحامية جومانا كيروز على الهواء مباشرة. أرقام الهواتف في الاستوديو للمشاركة في البرنامج 313-769-6666 من وينزر كندا 519-256-1023. دائما عن طريق الواتساب برسائل نصية أو صوتية 313-327-7074. ونذكركم بأن مكاتب المحامية جومانا كيروز تستقبل قضاياكم المتعلقة بالإصابات الشخصية من ضمنها حوادث السيارات، إصابات العمل، الأخطاء الطبية، قضايا الهجرة والتجنس، قضايا الإفلاس، الضمان الاجتماعي وقوانين العائلة. والاستشارات مجانية 248-557-3645. مساء الخير جميعا، أهلا وسهلا جمانة. مساء الخير.
مساء الخير رامي، يعطيك ألف عافية. كيفك اليوم؟
الله يعافيك، الحمد لله. نسأل عنك إن شاء الله تمام.
كتر خير الله. بعتذر حطيته لبات على I am very sorry، بس إذا بتسمح لي لحظة.
نعم ولا يهمك.
Okay. I am so sorry. Pat, can you hear us?
Of course I can. Hi, Joumana.
Okay,
how are you?
Very good. I have no intention of looking at your face. I just want to hear your voice. So let me see what I did here. I do apologize. Give me 1 minute. Well, good afternoon, everybody.
Hi, Joumana.
Hello, Pat. Okay, I still see you. That's fine. I see you. You're not gonna see me.
Well, I'm wearing a dress shirt today. You know, during the pandemic, it's different practicing law because we're not in front of judges all the time.
That is right. Although when we appear via Zoom, we have to be dressed properly, as if we were going to court.
At least from the waist up, yes.
Yeah, yes. Some people have gotten into trouble because they were properly dressed up but not down. And we've heard of a couple of horror stories happening on a national level with newscasters and people on major newsweb networks, right?
Exactly.
Yes. All right. Well, hello, everybody. Rami, hello to all of our listeners. Like every Thursday, we talk about Social Security, SSI, SSD, as well as about workmen's compensation. Attorney Patrick Horan has 28 years of experience handling clients who are in need of SSI, SSD, or who need to appeal their SSI, SSD, and workmen's compensation, work-related injury. Today, we're going to begin by talking about something we said we're going to take some time to explain to our listeners because it's a very good piece of information for their protection, particularly those who are independent contractors. Independent contractors who get injured doing what they need to do on their job are a vulnerable group of people who may end up being stuck with their medical bills and without anybody paying their wages, although they are injured or off work as a result of an injury. We're going to talk about that at great length today, and that's what we call occupational accident insurance. But before we talk about that, let me just say this in Arabic. رامي مرة أو مرتين بالماضي قلنا إنه بدنا نخصص وقت بهيدا البرنامج مثل كل نهار خميس بنحكي عن قانون الضمان الاجتماعي وقانون الإصابات ضمن العمل لنحكي عن شيء هو لحماية هي insurance بيقدر يشتريها كل إنسان هو independent contractor ولازم يشتريها كل إنسان هو independent contractor لأنه الأشخاص اللي هن 1099 أو independent contractor. بعيون القانون هن مش موظفين، يعني بعيون القانون على القليلة في ولاية ميشيغان منهم على البيرول ما عندهم حماية بحال تعرضوا لإصابة ضمن العمل. الإنسان الموظف محمي ضمن العمل إذا رب العمل شاري انشورنس، بس الأشخاص اللي بيشتغلوا مع آخرين وهن independent contractors، هؤلاء الأشخاص عليهم خطر إنه إذا لا سمح الله تعرضوا لإصابة ما في workman's comp insurance لتغطي لهم طبابتهم وجزء من الراتب تبعهم. في عندهم حل وحيد، وهذا الحل الوحيد إنه يشتروا حماية، وللحقيقة هي رخيصة كتير، اسمها Occupational Accident Insurance OAI. هيدي الانشورنس الوحيدة اللي هي لحماية هؤلاء الأشخاص. قبل ما نبلش بدي أسأل سؤال سريع للمحامي باتريك هوران عن إذا هالوقت من السنة بقانون الوركمنز كومبنسيشن حتى بقانون السوشيال سيكيورتي although I don't think that's the case، هل هو is a busy time of the year مثل ما هو بمكتبنا بحوادث السيارات آخر السنة؟ في كتير كار انشورنس كومبانيز بدها تسكر ملفات، مستعدة تعمل تسويات، توصل لحل بملفات لحتى تبدأ السنة وعندها ملفات أقل من العادة. آخر السنة دايما نحن عنا نوفمبر وديسمبر is a very very busy time بمكتبنا، لأنه منكون عم نخلص تسويات. ليه؟ لأنه في استعداد أكثر من العادة من قبل الانشورنس كومبانيز الطرف الآخر إنه يسكروا ملفات. كتير أوقات بنعمل شيء اسمه settlement day، بيكون عنا 50 ملف مع بروجريسيف، بنقعد معهم نهارين وبنحاول نحل قد ما فينا أكبر عدد من الملفات اللي هي بالمحاكم اللي هي ضد بروجريسيف أو اللي ضد مثلا إنسان سبب حادث وهو عنده بروجريسيف. بدي أسأل بات إذا هذا الشيء موجود في قانون الوركمنز كومب أو حتى في قانون السوشيال سيكيورتي. بات, November and December are the busiest months of the year in our offices, and I suspect in other law firms that practice that represent clients in car accidents, because insurance companies are very motivated to settle cases and finish them off and start the beginning of the year with less cases. So much so that we have settlement days on a regular basis in November and December with various insurance companies. I think we have one coming up with Progressive very soon, where all of the cases that we have filed against Progressive or against somebody else who's represented by Progressive, we sit down and we try to come to an agreement with the insurance company and we try to settle those cases. Do you have any such thing in workman's compensation?
We do. It's been a while, but I've certainly had settlement days. There's so many different workers' comp insurance companies that ordinarily I won't have more than, say, 5 files with any given insurance company at a time. But I have had times when the claims adjuster would actually set up in the workers' comp agency in a conference room and meet with us all one after the other to try and settle the case.
Okay, and does it typically happen in November and December because you find that there is an interest on the part of these workmen's compensation insurance companies to move files?
There are. They definitely seem to want to close their books on the end of the year. It's complicated when you've got defense attorneys who may have a lower file count and they're not motivated to move cases because they're billing on them, you see.
Okay, so lawyers representing workmen's comp insurance companies are like lawyers representing car insurance companies. They are not as motivated to settle because they bill their client, the insurance company, per hour, correct?
That's right.
Okay, very good. I suppose the answer is no, but let me ask it anyhow. Do we have any similar thing with SSI and SSD? And I think the answer is no, right?
No, of course not. The Social Security, the Social Security Administration runs on their own calendar, and they don't care when files are empty. Now, I will say this: the Social Security office, the hearing office, keeps very detailed metrics on how long it takes for decisions to be written, and I think that the judges are evaluated internally on that, and so they are pressured to move files.
Okay, I understand. Let's talk now about workman's compensation versus occupational accident insurance. This is an important subject that I really want us today to take all the time we need to explain it to our listeners, because the idea is we want to help our listeners, especially those who are independent contractors, to properly protect themselves, especially those who are independent contractors and who are on the road. You know, that's what that job is. For example, truckers, for example, drivers for medical transportation. By the very nature of their job, they are in a high risk position where they are more likely to be injured, and their injuries are more likely to be severe than on a sit down job. People who are in factories, for example, and so forth and so on. So we want to talk today to these independent contractors. First of all, the law here in Michigan, and correct me at any point, please, or interrupt me at any point. The law here in Michigan says that if you are an employer and if you have 3 employees or more, no matter how many hours they work a week, you are required to buy workman's compensation insurance. So if I have 3 employees, each one working 5 hours a week, I am required to buy workman's compensation for my employees. Another way I am required as an employer to buy workman's compensation insurance for my employees is if I have 1 employee or more employees working at least 35 hours a week for at least 13 weeks in the past 1 year. So either I have the sheer number of 3 at any one time right now, doesn't matter how many hours, then I'm required to buy workman's comp, or I have 1 employee or more employees working 35 hours for about 13 weeks. So 12 divided by 4, that's 3 months. And how I know that today is by looking at last year. If at any point during my last year, my business, my company hired 1 or more people who worked 35 or more hours a week for 13 weeks or more, then I need to carry workman's compensation insurance as an employer, correct?
Yeah, Joumana, and we've spoken in the past about employees who are paid on a 1099 form, and the question becomes whether in fact they are an employee or whether they're an independent contractor. And just because the employer deems them or informs them that they're an independent contractor doesn't necessarily mean that they are. They still may be, for purposes of the Workers' Comp Act, covered as employees.
Okay. But talking about the responsibility of those who own businesses, the first thing we said is that if you have 3 or more employees, or you have 1 employee or more who has worked more than 35 hours for 3 months or more, you have to buy workman's comp insurance. So we don't want people to think that they have to be a big company to buy workman's comp insurance. You can be 1 employer and 1 employee. It can be me and an assistant under me who has worked last year for 35 hours or more a week for at least 3 months, and now I have to buy workman's compensation. You also did say that to violate the law in the state of Michigan, workman's compensation laws vary from state to state. We're talking about the state of Michigan. If you are required to buy workman's compensation insurance and you do or you don't, not only is it dangerous for you, and we'll talk about it because you can be sued personally, but more than that, you are guilty of a felony, correct?
Yeah, it's a fine of more than $1,000 or 6 months in jail. And I've had this conversation a number of times over the years where an uninsured employer, I'll call them and inform them that I'm filing a workers' comp claim, and without fail, they always will impugn my client's character. They'll say, "Oh, that guy's lying. He didn't really get hurt." And I'll say, "Listen, I'm not going to listen to you because you're breaking the law by not having insurance." And so, as far as I'm concerned, they can pound sand.
Okay, very good. So we established, which businesses out there it must carry workman's compensation. We also established that if a business does not carry workman's compensation, it's a violation of the law. It is a felony. It's a felony to the owner of the business, right?
That's right.
Okay, so it is a felony, and there are up to 6 months in jail and more than $1,000 fine. In addition to that, if as an employer you were supposed to buy workman's compensation for the protection of your employees and you don't, it's a very foolish idea not to do it. It's a very stupid idea not to do it, because now as an employer you can be sued for pain and suffering by the employee, and you can be sued personally, versus if you followed the law and bought workers' compensation, you can never be sued personally, and there is no pain and suffering. So the law rewards you. If you follow the law and you buy workman's compensation, you have protected your employees for paying their medical bills and some of their wages. You've also protected yourself, because now as an employer, you are immune from being sued. Otherwise, you exposed yourself to a regular negligence claim by an employee of yours, in addition to a criminal charge. So if you are an employer and you do not buy workman's compensation insurance, you are civilly and criminally liable. Correct?
Yes, that's right. And
okay.
I think we also discussed that even if your employer doesn't have workers' comp insurance, there's still a remedy for the injured worker, because there's a state uninsured security fund that will protect the injured worker in that situation.
Okay, let's take a quick break, and then I will begin by translating very quickly our first point in Arabic, namely the significance, the importance and the significance, the importance of buying workman's comp and the significance of not buying workman's comp on the part of an employer, and then we will move to what you call uninsured employers fund. Let's take a quick break.
هل لديك مشاكل في قضايا الضمان الاجتماعي أو قانون إصابات العمل؟ المحامي باتريك هوران من مكاتب المحامية جومانا كيروز يضع خبرة 28 عاما في قضايا الضمان الاجتماعي وإصابات ضمن العمل في خدمتكم. الاستشارات مجانية. اتصل الآن بمكاتب المحامية جومانا كيروز 248-557-3645. يتحدثون لغتكم العربية والكلدانية. 248-557-3645.
عودة إلى برنامج رايتس مع المحامية جومانا كيروز. أرقام الهواتف في البرنامج وفي الاستوديو المشاركة في حلقة اليوم، الأرقام هي 313-769-6666 519-256-1023 من وزارة كندا، وعبر الواتساب 313-327-7074. جومانا نرجع لك.
شكرا رامي. كنا عم نحكي مع المحامي باتريك هوران عن مين من أصحاب البزنسز مفروض عليهم في ولاية ميشيغان، لأنه القانون بيختلف من ولاية إلى أخرى، يشتري workman's compensation. workman's compensation هي مش بس لحماية الموظفين، هي كمان لحماية رب العمل. بس لنقول بالأول مين اللي مطلوب منه يشتري. ما بدي المستمعين يفكروا إنه إذا ما عندهم شركة كبيرة، إذا ما عندهم 10 موظفين 20 موظف 50 موظف، هن معفيين وهن سمول بزنس. حتى لو إنسان عنده 3 موظفين وكل موظف بيشتغل ساعة بالجمعة، عدد الموظفين 3 أو أكثر، بيفرض على صاحب العمل يشتري لهم انشورنس. الطريقة الثانية إنه صاحب العمل يشتري انشورنس، يمكن يكونوا شخصين، صاحب العمل وموظف عنده، ويكون هيدا كافي لصاحب العمل يكون مطلوب منه قانونيا انه يشتري workman's insurance. اذا الموظف اللي تحت ايده بيشتغل على القليله 35 ساعه بالاسبوع وصار له عنده على القليله 3 اشهر، القانون بيقول سوري بتهلا لازم تشتري workman's compensation. يعني ما بدي الجالية تفكر إنه إذا ما كان البزنس كبير، إذا ما كان عدد الموظفين كتار، يعني مش مضطرين نشتري workman's compensation. لأنه اللي ما بيشتري workman's compensation مخالف بطريقتين: مخالف جنائيا لأنه هي جناية it's a felony، ومخالف مدنيا. مخالف جنائيا It is a felony، فيها حبس لحد 6 أشهر وفيها جزاء أكثر من $1000. واللي أخطر من هيك بصراحة هي مخالف مدنيا، لأنه رب العمل اللي مفروض يشتري بس مش شاري أو شاري وما كمل workman's compensation، صار هلأ بحق له الموظف يقيم دعوة ضده لرب العمل pain and suffering، وبيقدر يلاحقه شخصيا. بس رب العمل اللي شاري workman's compensation حامي حاله، لأنه القانون بيقول إنه وقت الإنسان بيتعرض لإصابة ضمن العمل وفي workman's compensation insurance، الموظف بيقدر فقط يحصل طبابته جزء من الراتب تبعه، بس ما بحق له يقيم دعوة ضد رب العمل عطل وضرر. يعني شراء workman's compensation insurance هي مش بس لحماية الموظفين اللي عندهم مين يدفع لهم طبابتهم بحال الإصابة، وعندهم مين يدفع لهم جزء من الراتب تبعهم إذا صار في إصابة، وهي لحماية رب العمل لأنه بيحصن حاله من إقامة دعوة ضده بحال كان الإهمال بسبب رب العمل أو بسبب الظروف اللي هي موجودة بالشغل. لنقول الإنسان عم يشتغل كوك مثلا بمطعم أو شيف أو بسيارة عم بيسوق medical transportation company or whatever it is. أوقات كتير بيكون الغلط هو بسبب صاحب العمل. إذا في workman's compensation ما بيقدر الموظف يقيم دعوة ضد صاحب العمل، بس بيقدر يحصل طبابته وبيقدر يحصل جزء من الراتب مش من رب العمل، من workman's compensation insurance. بس إذا صاحب العمل ما حصن حاله، ساعتها هذا الموظف بيقدر يقيم دعوة ضده بعطل وضرر، يعني في عليها خطر. كمان ما بدنا العالم تفكر انه اذا كان بزنس صغير، انا موظفين، انا ما بدي اشتري، ماني مضطر اشتري او مش مطلوب مني اشتري workman's compensation. That is not what the law says. ممكن يكون عندك موظف واحد.
عفوا عن المقاطعة، من وين يجيبوا يعني يشتروا الانشورنس هذا؟ هل من شركات الانشورنس العادية، شركات التأمين على السيارات، ولا في مصدر آخر؟
في عدة انشورنس كومبانيز بيبيعوا كار انشورنس، كمان هن بيبيعوا workman's compensation، وفي شركات أخرى بتبيع فقط workman's compensation insurance وما بتبيع كار انشورنس. بتتكلم مع الانشورنس ايجنت تبعك وبيعمل لك بيعطيك 2 or 3 quotes من عدة شركات. إجمالا يعني أنا مثلا عندي بالمكتب الشركات اللي تعاملت معهم over the years هن منهم شركات بيبيعوا كار انشورنس، هن تقريبا بيتخصصوا بهداك المجال. بس في كار انشورنس كومبانيز كمان بيبيعوا workman's compensation insurance، مش كلهم ومش أغلبيتهم، البعض منهم. نعم. أول شغلة نحن قلناها هلأ أهمية إنه الإنسان اللي كرب عمل إنه اللي بده يشتري، اللي مفروض عليه يشتري، لازم يشتريها، بيحمي الموظفين وبيحمي حاله كمان، مش بس بيحمي الموظفين. يعني القانون بيعطيه حصانة. المحامي باتريك هوران بلش يقلنا إذا رب عمل، لنقول سلم جدلا رب عمل مفروض يشتري workman's compensation بس مش شاري أو اشترى وما كملها، والموظف تعرض لإصابة ضمن العمل، طب شو بيعمل الموظف؟ هون بدنا نحكي عن شيء اسمه بولاية ميشيغان ومش حكينا عنه سابقا، اسمه uninsured employers fund. uninsured employers fund هي رح نقول fund بانك اكاونت لنقول لحماية هؤلاء الموظفين اللي حرام هن كان مفروض يكون عندهم workman's comp، واللي مفروض رب العمل تبعهم يشتري لهم workman's comp، واللي رب العمل تبعهم مش شاري لهم workman's comp او مش عامل maintaining of the workman's comp، بس هن متعرضين لإصابات بتلزمهم طبابة وبتلزمهم راتب. هدول الأشخاص اللي رب العمل تبعهم ما تبع القانون شو بيعملوا؟ منين بيدفعوا الراتب تبعهم أو بيدفعوا workman's comp؟ عم نحكي عن موظفين in an employee setting، ما عم نحكي عن independent contractors، عم نحكي عن الموظفين اللي هن بالفعل موظفين، اللي هن على البيرول، اللي هن بريئين، اللي رب العمل تبعهم كان مفروض بسبب the number of people عنده، ولا بسبب انه عنده موظف بيشتغل اكثر من 35 ساعة لمدة 3 أشهر ومش شاري workman's comp، وهالموظف تأذى. هيدا الموظف شو بيعمل؟ So attorney Patrick Horan, we're talking about true employees in a true employee-employer setting where the employer should have bought workman's comp but did not, and the employee gets injured on the job. You said that employee does not have workman's compensation insurance because the employer did not buy it, But the state of Michigan has opened a fund called the Uninsured Employers Fund. Is it run by the state?
That's right.
Okay. What does this fund do?
Well, essentially, they stand in the shoes of a workers' comp insurance company, and they administer benefits to claims made against uninsured employers.
Okay, very good. So even if your employer did not buy workman's compensation insurance, you can still get your medical wages, your medical bills and your wages paid not from a workman's compensation insurance because your employer didn't buy, but from what's called uninsured employers fund. And also, if the injury is the result of your employer's negligence, you can also sue your employer directly, whereas in a workman's compensation, you cannot. Am I right?
Exactly. And, it's important to note that a lot of times small employers like this will attempt to bully an injured worker and say, hey, I don't even have insurance. You won't have any luck. And that's not true. If you get hurt on the job, you still might have a remedy, even if your employer did not purchase insurance.
Okay. Thank you very much. So the point we're making today is just because you're very, very small does not mean you do not qualify as an employer for buying workman's compensation insurance. That's number one. And number two, all the employers listening out there understand that when you buy workman's compensation, not only are you doing the right thing for your employee, but you are also shielding yourself from being personally sued. That's the only way you as an employer can shield yourself. If you do not buy it, you're not going to shield yourself and you cannot benefit from the law. You can be sued personally if the injury is the result of your negligence. Now, let's forget employer-employee. Let's talk about people who are truly independent contractors. Let's not even say they're calling themselves independent contractor, but really they're employees. Let's say it is an independent contractor. Let's say it's a trucker who is providing, maybe driving his own truck, working with another company, transporting goods from one state to the other, and is on the job a lot. He does not work for that company. He works for himself. He has his own company consisting of him. He does not work for the other company. He works with the other company. He gets goods from their warehouse and transports it from Michigan to Texas or from Michigan to New York and back, and is injured on the job, en route, or even not in an accident, loading, unloading, whatever it is. That person is really an independent contractor. What if this person injures himself or herself? What if this person still needs treatment, hospital bills, doctor bills, loss of income because cannot work because injured himself or herself? How can this person, the company he works with, not for, is not obligated to cover him because he's not on their payroll. He's not an employee. They're not bound by law to pay or provide workers' compensation. How can this independent contractor, especially an independent contractor who is in a high-risk job like driving, how can this independent contractor protect himself?
And that's the situation where they should purchase the occupational accident insurance you spoke of.
Okay, so occupational accident insurance, also called OAI, looks a lot like workman's compensation, except workman's compensation insurance is bought by a true employer. Occupational accident insurance can be bought by an employer, or in this case, should be bought by an independent contractor. On the face of it, they look very similar. Workman's compensation insurance will pay your medical bills. Occupational accident insurance will pay your medical bills. Although there is a ceiling, we'll talk about that in a minute. Workman's compensation insurance will pay a portion of your wages if you cannot work because of your injury. Occupational accident insurance, if you're an independent contractor, will pay a portion of your wages. So on the face of it, they look very, very similar. But one is bought only by an employer. The other one can be bought by a company to entice independent contractors to work with them, but if it's not bought or offered, should be bought by the independent contractor, because that's the only way in the event that the independent contractor gets injured, that's the only way that independent contractors' medical bills, any portion of their wages, get paid.
That's
Correct?
right. Yes, that's right. I had a client call just a week ago in this very situation. He was a trucker and he was securing his load and fell off of the trailer and suffered a pretty bad head injury. In fact, he called me from the hospital. And I was able to determine that he was an independent contractor and he had occupational accident insurance, which covered him even better than he would have gotten from a typical workers' comp claim.
Right. Because of the, let me ask you, did this independent contractor trucker person, did he himself buy the occupational accident insurance, or did the company for whom he transports goods as an incentive buy that for him?
I'm pretty sure that the company bought this for him because he didn't know a whole lot about it. And I had to talk to the claims adjuster to make sure he was covered.
Okay, so it's good that the employer or the business with whom he's working bought it. The one thing I would say here is, if you are an independent contractor and the business you're working with offers it for you, you may want to look at it because it depends on what was bought. Sometimes these businesses will buy it, but it will not be the finest policy. Let me explain. Occupational accident insurance, it depends on how much you want to pay for it. And by the way, generally speaking, the cost of buying occupational accident insurance is about half the cost of buying workman's compensation. So to all the independent contractors out there, know that this is not expensive insurance. 2, it changes, it costs more the more benefits you buy. Let me give an example. I can buy car insurance from AAA, pay more because I'm asking for unlimited coverage, medical, pay less if I am asking for 250 medical, pay more if I am buying an umbrella policy, pay less if I'm not buying an umbrella policy. Occupational accident insurance, there is no one. You can buy insurance that has more money to pay on your medical bills, that has more weeks to pay on your wages, or you can save a little bit of money by buying an occupational accident insurance that pays less money on medical bills and pays less weeks on your wages. So to those who are listening, who are independent contractors, especially truckers, and who are getting occupational accident insurance offered by the business with whom they're working, take a look at this occupational accident insurance they're offering you, because it's nice that they're becoming attractive to work with, but maybe they're saving money by buying the basic minimum. And why am I telling you that? Because maybe you want to buy also your own occupational accident insurance, where you know you are well protected, where you see that your medical treatment is going to be sufficient in the event of an injury, where you see that the length of your wages are paid for a period sufficient for you to recover, because maybe what they're offering you is not good enough. In your specific case, the client who called about a week ago, you determined that the benefits offered under that occupational accident insurance were really good for him, that although you thought he was really an employee, although his employer called him an independent contractor, you decided not to rock that boat because you made a cost-benefit analysis and you found that his benefits under the occupational accident insurance beat his benefits under the workman's comp insurance.
That's right. And every case is different.
Right.
For instance, his policy had a cap on medical coverage of $250,000. Now, his injury was going to be fine with that. But if it had been a catastrophic injury, a workers' comp claim doesn't have a cap on lifetime medical, and he could easily go beyond that $250,000.
Okay. So workman's compensation, the law is like the law was in car accidents until July 2 of this year. Everybody had unlimited medical. That means that their car insurance or their workman's comp insurance can pay millions as long as they live and they need treatment for that injury. The law
right.
in workman's comp, at least on its face, is still unlimited medical treatment. If you are in a work-related injury and you need millions of dollars to treat or hundreds of thousands of dollars to treat and 15 years to treat, in theory at least, the law says that there is no limit on that medical. They will cover you and pay your medical bills arising out of that work-related injury, they being the workman's comp insurance, for as long as you need it. But in occupational accident insurance, there is a cap on medical. Depending on what you buy, you may have a cap of $50,000. That means tough luck. You can only get the first $50,000 of your medical paid. In your client's case, he had an occupational accident insurance with medical treatment up to $250,000. And because his injuries, you didn't think his treatment was going to exceed the $250,000. You decided that that was good enough. And also, you probably decided that it is better than the workman's comp because probably his wages, what they were going to pay under occupational accident insurance, was better than the 65-70% he was going to get under workman's comp.
That's right.
So that was a case by case. Good for him that person's occupational accident insurance was good for him. But the point we want to drive across is that occupational accident insurance is not, the best insurance out there, because no matter what you buy, there is a limit on the medical coverage and there is a limit on the wages. With workman's comp, there is no limit on your medical coverage and there is no limit on your wages, correct? The length,
right.
How long you need them, as long as a doctor disables you and so forth.
As long as you're disabled, correct.
Right, okay. But for people who are independent contractors, they don't qualify for workman's compensation. So the second best thing and the only best thing is to buy the cheap occupational accident insurance. But please look at what you are buying, because you want to make sure that the medical cap is not small and the wages can go on for, you will have options. And the better the options, the more money you pay for occupational accident insurance.
Yeah, Joumana, and I think you've mentioned before, we've used the example of truck drivers because it's very common. But,
right.
Our economy now has more and more what are thought of as gig workers, where people are doing their own thing and getting paid on a piecework or per job basis. And in that situation, they likely would not be covered for workers' comp.
That is correct. And we have heard this term gig worker a lot in the context of the pandemic because of the stimulus package that was being designed for employees, independent contractors, and gig workers. But for the benefit of this discussion, whether you are a gig worker or whether you are, which a gig worker is like almost like the project you're working on has a beginning and an end. You're working on a project. Somebody hired you to finish a roof. Somebody hired you to do garden work, or do, design or something like that. Versus truckers who may be dealing with the same company day in, day out, week in, week out, and are called more like independent contractors. But the occupational accident insurance is the same. Now, one thing I wanted to add, I get calls on a regular basis. I don't mean every week, but I get this question on a regular basis that sometimes people work in our community as employees for business owners, and they're not even sure. And they are in high-risk jobs, let's say transportation. And they're not even sure if the employer has bought, as he should, workman's compensation insurance. So they're afraid. I mean, I remember somebody who worked for a medical transportation company from our community and was almost certain that his employer did not purchase workman's compensation. And what we say to this person is, even if you are a true employee, and even if your employer should buy workman's comp but didn't, you can benefit from the uninsured employees fund, but nothing prevents you, even if you are an employee, from buying occupational accident insurance, correct? No insurance company is going to say to you, oh, no, you don't qualify because you are an independent contractor. Anybody can buy occupational accident insurance, correct?
Yes, that's right.
So an employee who is afraid that his employer has not bought workman's comp and who wants to protect himself, nothing prevents that employee, even a true employee, like an independent contractor, like a gig worker, nothing prevents them from filing, from purchasing occupational accident insurance. Let's take a very quick break, and then I'm going to explain this briefly in Arabic and continue.
لديك مشاكل في قضايا الضمان الاجتماعي أو قانون إصابات العمل؟ المحامي باتريك هوران من مكاتب المحامية جومانا كيروز يضع خبرة 28 عاما في قضايا الضمان الاجتماعي وإصابات ضمن العمل في خدمتكم. الاستشارات مجانية. اتصل الآن بمكاتب المحامية جومانا كيروز 248-557-3645. يتحدثون لغتكم العربية والكلدانية. 248-557-3645.
عودة إلى برنامج الرايتس مع المحامية جومانا كيروز، وأرقام الهواتف في الاستوديو 313-769-6666 519-256-1023. جومانا، في عندنا سؤال تحت الهواء عن نوع الإصابات في إطار العمل. يعني هل حيلا إصابة الواحد يتعرض لها حتى لو كانت خفيفة أنه الشخص بإمكانه أنه يشتكي ويحصل على تعويض، ولا أنه بمعنى الإصابة أنه لازم يعني تخلي الشخص غير قادر على ممارسة حياته الطبيعية في هذا الوقت لازم يرفع دعوة على يعني في إطار إصابات العمل؟
رح أطلب من المحامي هو يشرحها، بس رح أقول شغلة سريعة. نحن ما عم نحكي حوادث سيارات، عم نحكي إصابات ضمن العمل. بالإصابات ضمن العمل، إذا الإصابة نبعت من العمل أو خاصة بالعمل، وإذا أثرت على طريقة واحدة فقط، مش مثل حوادث السيارات، على عدم قدرة رجوعه إلى العمل، عدم قدرة رجوعه، هون حقوقه فقط، ما في تعويض رامي. ما في تعويض بمعنى التعويض يعني pain and suffering، يعني عطل وضرر. التعويض هو فقط دفع الطبابة وجزء من الراتب. مش هيك دائما بنقول انه اللي بيقدم على workman's camp واللي بيقعد خارج العمل ما رح يكون مبسوط بالتسوية تبعه لو شو ما كانت، لانه احسن تسوية ما حدا بيغنى من وراء workman's compensation case. احسن تسوية ما بترد 60% من شو كان هيدا الإنسان بده يطلع لو ضله يشتغل. يعني القانون الطريقة المكتوب فيها ما بيشجع العالم إنه يعملوا إصابات ضمن العمل ويقعدوا بالبيت لأنه بده يكون عندهم تسوية عطل وضرر مثل حوادث السيارات. ما في شيء اسمه عطل وضرر، هو فقط تعويض جزئي عن الراتب. يعني اللي كان يعمل 100,000 رح يجيب منهم 60,000، يعني أحسن له كان يشتغل بيعمل 100,000 مش 60,000، وهيدي بلا تكاليف المحامي. ما في حدا بيقوم بworkman's compensation case وبيكون مبسوط من التسوية، لأنه التسوية هي منا 100%. التسوية ما بتردك لشو كنت أنت بدك تطلع لو ما تعرضت للإصابة من العمل. مش هيك مكتوب القانون. أما نوع الإصابات بدها تكون خاصة بالشغل، مش ضروري تكون بالأربع جدران تبع الشغل، بس بيكون خاصة بالشغل. رح أطلب من المحامي إنه يوضح نتفة أكتر. Attorney Patrick Horan, one of the questions we received off the air is, can any injury constitute, I know it's a vague question, a work-related injury? Why don't you clarify a little bit? What is a work-related injury? Does it have to be within the four walls of the job? How does someone decide that? And two, I apologize. And two, the second part of the question is, do you have to prove that the injury has changed the quality of your life, much like in a car accident, in order for you to get a settlement? So if you can address the quality of the life issue, and when we talk settlement, nobody's really happy because no settlement, any workman's comp makes anyone whole. 3 points, please.
Okay, I'm going to start from the last question because it's an important one. Workers' compensation is correctly termed workers' disability compensation, and that means you're not eligible for wage loss benefits unless you can prove that you are disabled. And the definition of disability in Michigan is,
Yes.
are you losing wages? Do you have a loss in your wage earning capacity because of your injury? As you can imagine, Joumana, you and I work jobs that are not physically very demanding, and we could have an injury that would prevent us from doing a heavy physical job, but we're still able to practice as attorneys. And so we would not actually have a wage loss from an injury that might cause a wage loss to somebody working at a loading dock, for instance. Now,
that is correct.
And then the other part of the question, I believe, was how do you prove that it's work-related? And in that situation, it has to be an injury or a disease that arose in the course and scope of your employment. Ordinarily, that's going to be something that happens while you're on the job. It can, however, be a disease process that manifests itself at home from an exposure, for instance, to toxic chemicals on the job, and you don't become ill until after you leave work.
Okay, and I think you the other part, the very last part of the question is a settlement. Can you clarify to people that to the extent that they think of a settlement, it's not for pain and suffering, and you're never going to get 100% of what you would have earned had you stayed working. So right. Nobody's really happy about their settlement because it's never 100% of what they would have done had they continued to work.
Very, very seldom do we get to do a touchdown dance in workers' comp. That's right. Now, the workers' comp magistrate can award weekly workers' comp benefits. The magistrate cannot award a lump sum settlement. That's always negotiated between the parties, between the employer or their insurance company and the injured worker. And that settlement is always based on two things. How much is their weekly workers' compensation rate, and how long is it likely the insurance company would have to pay that? And that's how we arrive at evaluating the value of a settlement of a case.
And how long does an insurance company need to pay that depends on the age of the person and, most importantly, the forecast of the medical condition of that person. How long do we expect them to stay out of work because of that disability?
That's right. If you have a broken arm and your doctor says the cast comes off in 6 weeks and full duty in 8 weeks, well, you're not going to settle a workers' comp case for a year's worth of benefits, obviously.
Correct. I just want to take about 3 or 4 minutes and just go over occupational accident insurance in Arabic to make sure that, you know, we got the message across. رامي كنا عم نحكي عن الأشخاص اللي هن منهم موظفين. الموظف مفروض يكون مغطى من قبل رب العمل تبعه بالوركمنز كومبنسيشن. إذا تعرض لإصابة ضمن العمل الطبابة تبعه مؤمنة وعلى القليل جزء من الراتب تبعه مؤمنة. إذا في عالم بتخاف وبحكيها يعني بكل صراحة بكل صراحة في أشخاص في بعض الأشخاص بالجالية اللي نحن فيها بيعرفوا إنه واجباتهم يشتروا workman's compensation بس ما بيشتروا للموظفين تبعهم. بيجيني اتصالات من وقت إلى آخر إنه أنا خايف أنا موظف عند هذا الشخص بس ما بفتكر شاري workman's compensation. ما في شيء بيمنع الموظف لأنه الموظف ما عنده القدرة بالنهاية يحط فرد براس رب العمل ويجبره يشتري workman's compensation. إذا هذا رب العمل منه ذكي وواعي كفاية ليعرف إنه workman's compensation هي لحمايته كمان إن كان جنائيا ولا إن كان مدنيا. الموظف ما بيقدر بس الموظف ليرتاح أكتر ما بيمنع ما في موظف ما بيمنع انه اي موظف حتى لو كان موظف شاكك او خايف انه رب العمل ما يكون شاري عليه workman's comp بالاخص لهدول الموظفين اللي هن in high risk job. يعني فرق اذا كان موظف قاعد in a sit down job، فرق اذا موظف عم يشتغل on a factory on the assembly line، وفرق اذا موظف is on the road. هدول الاثنين الآخرين are high risk job. ما في شيء بيمنع موظف يشتري occupational accident insurance. occupational accident insurance رامي كتير رخيصة، منا غالية أبدا. كقاعدة عامة هي قيمتها نص workman's compensation، workman's compensation مش غالية. occupational accident insurance على القليلة بتغطي إلى حد ما طبابة وإلى حد ما راتب. بس هون النقطة اللي بدي أقولها إنه مش كل ما في شيء اسمه هيدي occupational. بدك تعرف كيف وقت تشتري كار انشورنس رامي. فيك تشتري أغلى شيء، فيك تشتري أرخص شيء، فيك تشتري شيء in the middle حسب شو حاجاتك أو حسب شو قدرتك للدفع. زيت الشيء بالoccupational accident insurance. فيك تشتري وحدة أرخص عليها مثلا بغطوا طبابة أول $50,000 بحال إصابة. وفي عندك مثل هذا الموكل اللي اتصل فينا من جمعة اللي طلع عنده occupational accident insurance بتغطي طبابته لحد $250,000. بما انه الإصابة تبعه منا جدية بنعرف انه ما رح يستعمل $250 كلها. it was good for him. بس لا سمح الله كان إصابته كتير كبيرة $250,000 بتروح دغري. so اللي بده يشتري occupational accident insurance إن كان اللي عم بيتسموا علينا اللي هن independent contractors أو الموظفين اللي خايفين إنه رب العمل تبعهم مش شاري مثل ما لازم، يتأكدوا إنه يدرسوا occupational accident insurance ويشوفوا عم اشتروها بس شو بتغطي لحد قد ايه، طبابة لحد قد ايه. إذا كانت الطبابة كتير صغيرة يعني مثل واحد عم بيغش حاله مفكر إنه شاري وحامي حاله بس هو ما حامي حاله. إذا شاريها $10,000 هيدي منا شيء. لازم الإنسان يشتريها بس يكون الميديكال تريتمنت فيها عالي. وبعدين الشغلة الثانية اللي بتغطيه هي الراتب لأسابيع معينة. اسألوا فيكم تعلوا الراتب قد ايه نسبة الراتب بيدفعوا لكم 70% 50% من الراتب. هل فيكم تشتروا occupational accident insurance أغلى شوي أعلى شوي. هل عدد الأسابيع طالما أنتوا out of work بالoccupational accident insurance فيها تكون أكثر من 40 أسبوع أكثر من 20 أسبوع. طبعا كل ما كانت البوليسة بتقدم أكثر كل ما رح تكون أغلى. أنتوا فيكم تقارنوا وتشوفوا شو بتقدروا what you can afford. بس عرفوا أنه ما في شيء اسمه one cookie cutter اسمه occupational accident insurance. في المينيموم اللي بيقدموه وفي أكثر من المينيموم وبتغلى كل ما دفعوا. هلأ مثل ما قلنا للأشخاص اللي هن independent contractors واللي هن بالأخص بيشتغلوا construction بيشتغلوا driving إلى آخره يعني high risk job أو factories أو assembly lines. الطريقة الوحيدة يحموا حالهم هن منهم موظفين هن منهم على البيرول. ما في رب عمل في businesses بيتعاملوا بس ما في رب عمل كرب عمل. الطريقة الوحيدة يحموا حالهم يشتروا الoccupational accident insurance ليلي البزنسز اللي عم بيتعاملوا معهم. لأنه أوقات في businesses مثل الانسنتيفز اللي بيقدمون بيقولوا له للاندبندنت كونتراكتور ونحن بنقدم لك occupational accident insurance. that's great. بس اطلعوا عليها لتشوفوا إذا كافية. طلعوا عليها تشوفوا قد ايه الطبابة 50,000 250,000 10,000 الراتب. يعني مش لأنه it's being offered معناتها جيدة وكافية. إذا ما كانت كافية ما بيمنع الاندبندنت كونتراكتور إنه منه لحاله يشتري occupational accident insurance ليحمي حاله. هدول النقاط اللي نحن اليوم حبينا نوصلهم. Attorney Patrick Horan, is there anything more? The one thing we wanted to also again point out is that occupational accident insurance is not the best thing in the whole wide world because it has a cap on medical. It's no matter what, there is a limit. For truly catastrophic injuries, I don't think it will be sufficient. I don't know what's the highest medical you can buy in an occupational accident insurance, but it might not be sufficient, correct?
Right. And I mean, heaven forbid, if you have a death case, it's unlikely that that's going to pay out wage loss benefits to the survivors.
Occupational accident insurance.
Right.
And some occupational accident insurance also allow you to sue the business that you're working with for pain and suffering if your injury as an independent contractor is their fault. Let's say, for example, they provided you with a defective equipment and because of it, you got injured. If you have occupational accident insurance, you may also be able to sue that business for pain and suffering if it is their fault.
Right.
Okay. We have 2 minutes. I got a call yesterday. I will try to do it very quickly. I had a call yesterday after our car accident show. I had several calls, and of course, I will not give enough information to. I'll just keep it vague. A gentleman called and wanted to know where should he buy car insurance from, which insurance companies. I will answer that there is no good insurance company. but there is bad and worse insurance companies. So there are the insurance companies you do not want to deal with, and you must avoid at all costs, even if they offer you. And those insurance companies, the ones that are bad, are likely the ones that are the most attractive because they sell you cheaper insurance, cheaper premiums. But no matter what, that's not the place to save. You don't associate with them. We've talked about Allstate, and we've talked about State Farm, and we've talked about Liberty Mutual, and we've talked about Insurance. And these are, and an insurance company is coming on my radar, which I believe, I don't think is a good insurance company, but I haven't made up my mind 100%. I need more evidence. I believe is State Auto. I'm seeing that name a lot, and I think it's because they're offering cheaper insurance premiums, and I wonder why. So there is no good insurance company, but there are very bad insurance companies, yet that no matter what, you do not want to associate with. And then how you compare, you ask your agent to give you 3 quotes from 3 different insurance companies, and you compare who gives you the best rate. I think our time is up. Thank you so very much, Attorney Patrick Horan. And until tomorrow, thank you all.